Hello everyone, Christina here. Welcome back to another card video. Today I have 3 cards made using card sketches that I showed you guys in my last video. I showed you a bunch of new products from Simon Says Stamps, sketched out some ideas with those products, and then now I'm going to be creating cards based on those sketches. Starting out with this first one using the World of Love stamp. It's a very large cling stamp with a big heart design. And I thought it would be really fun to use strips of colorful cardstock. So I've actually gone to my cardstock stash and picked out 6 different colors of Hero Arts cardstock. Basic rainbow colors, because I love this grouping, and I've cut them into 1-inch strips. Now I'm planning to adhere them to my card with a little bit of a gap in between each color, so I'm arranging them on my work surface in the same fashion. I'm using some washi tape to hold them together so that I can pick up the entire grouping of cardstock strips and move them to my MISTI. Placing them inside my MISTI, and then I'm going to place this World of Love cling stamp. Now I'm going to be heat embossing the stamp image in white embossing powder. So I'm first going to prep the area with an anti-static powder tool, and then I will ink up my stamp in Versamark ink. Versamark is the perfect ink for embossing. You guys have heard me say it a million times. It's perfect because it's sticky and it doesn't dry too quickly. So I actually stamped this twice to make sure I got a really solid impression. And then I picked up that entire piece of all those cardstock strips, and I applied some white embossing powder. This is Alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. And even though I have it in a container, which you can see, I did put down a piece of paper to catch all of it because I knew that this entire grouping of cardstock was really big. So I decided to just work with it and put down some scratch paper. I used my heat tool to melt all of that embossing powder until it was smooth. And then I left it with all the washi tape attached and made pencil marks on the end of each strip so I knew exactly how long I wanted each one to be. I want to stagger the sizes a little bit so they're not all the same length. I then removed the washi tape and used my paper trimmer to trim down all of these cardstock strips. So at this point, it's time to start arranging them onto what will be my card front. So I put some foam tape on the back of each one of these strips and then just arranged them on a full piece of cardstock. I wasn't sure the size of card at this point, so I decided to just use a full piece of cardstock. This is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock. I removed the release paper on the back of the foam strips and then adhered my entire piece together. I then grabbed my T-square ruler and a craft knife. This is a craft knife from Tim Holtz and Tonic. And I just kind of eyeballed it. I didn't measure it in any particular way, but it ended up being about 7 inches wide by 7.5 inches tall. So this is a really big card. It definitely makes a statement. To turn it into an actual card, I put it on top of another piece of cardstock and then used my ruler to cut down the side so that this new piece of cardstock is the exact width of my card design. I then took that long piece of cardstock, put it in my score buddy, and scored it at 1 inch from the edge. Then I can fold that down, and that becomes the fold of the card. I folded the flap down and put adhesive on the front of that flap, and then lined up my card design right over the top. Tried to get it perfectly lined up on that fold and also along the left edge, and then press down. The last thing to do is to even up the ends of these and just use the bottom of my card design as a guide and a ruler to cut off the excess cardstock. So now I have my basic card made. I just need to add my greeting to it. So I used the Greetings Mix 2 stamp set, and I stamped the Happier Days Are Coming and white heat embossed that. And then I used the Nested Circles die set from Simon to cut that out into a circle. Put some foam strips on the back and then press that down onto my card front. So my card's finished, but like I said, it's really big. And I was like, what am I going to do about an envelope? Well, I'm going to make my own envelope. So first I measured my card, so it's 7 by 7.5, and then I looked up online. There's actually a couple websites they're basically an envelope generator for you for using the We Are Memory Keepers punch boards. So I looked that up online. I'll have a link in the blog post and in the video description if you're looking for a way to figure out what measurements you need for your envelopes. I'm now using some cardstock paper from Simple Stories, and I just cut it to the exact size that envelope generator told me to do, and then use the same scoring guides as well. So I don't recall what they were. I might have to look it up again online. But if you're looking to make a very large envelope beyond the 7 by 7 envelope sizes that they list on your punch board, you can look it up using one of these envelope generators. So I just scored that all the way around and punched all the different notches. And at this point, I was still somewhat skeptical because this website wasn't like a real professional website where I got the measurements. But you know what? It actually worked out really, really well. And once I folded up all the sides and adhered the flaps, the card fit inside perfectly. Did want to mention that I got a tip from a friend. She said try putting the adhesive on the side flaps instead of the bottom. That's something that she does. And I think it's, either way, both ways work really well. With this one, you do have to kind of fold that flap up and see exactly where the edge of the bottom flap will be so that you can put adhesive in the right spot. But it does prevent you from putting too much adhesive on and having it stick to the inside of the envelope. So it's totally up to you what method you want to use. So after I had that Express It tape down on the flaps, I just really pressed it down using a bone folder and then peeled up the release paper. So I folded up the bottom of the envelope, and then I grabbed my card and slipped it inside to test it out and make sure that it was the exact size of my card. And you know what? It was perfect. It was the perfect size, and I was so pleased. I'm so excited to actually send this in the mail. It will need extra postage, but I'm still excited to send it. So that's my first card and envelope finished. I'm going to move on to the second card. So this sketch is one right here where it was a bunch of hexagons popped up off the front of the card with a greeting on one of them. So I'm using the same exact cardstock pieces or cardstocks colors that I used before. Figured I might as well. And I'm using the hexagon greetings die, the coordinating die that goes with the stamp set, to cut out all of these hexagons. I cut out 2 hexagons for each color of cardstock. So since I had 6 colors, I ended up with 12 hexagons. I'm not going to use all of them. I think I had 2 extras, but just so I had some variety and that wasn't short on any colors, I decided to cut 2 of each. I then cut some white cardstock to 3.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. And I got this measurement because it's going to be on a 5 by 7 card, and I wanted it to be considerably, have a pretty wide border. So I decided to use yellow for my greeting. So in order to stamp the greeting on this already die-cut hexagon, I'm first going to choose which greeting I want from the hexagon greeting stamp set and stamp that directly into my MISTI, just on the scratch paper inside. So I'll stamp that down, and then I'm going to take the leftover piece of cardstock from when I cut my hexagons, and I'll place that right over the top, like a frame, and just get it perfectly positioned in there. Use the magnet inside my MISTI to hold that in place, and then I'll take one of the yellow hexagons and puzzle piece that right back into the die cut hexagon area. And then I can ink up my greeting stamp around the door of the MISTI with some VersaFine Onyx black ink, and then stamp that down onto the hexagon. And this gives me a perfect stamping directly in the center of that die cut. So it's perfect. It's a really great way to get really precise stamping. So I arranged all of my hexagons on my white cardstock that I cut earlier, put foam adhesive on the back of each one of those, and left a little bit of a gap between each hexagon. And then I just left them hanging off the edges of that white cardstock and then flipped everything over and used a ruler and a craft knife to lop off all those extras. This is when I really feel like Laura Basson, because she's shown this in cards multiple times in videos. And this is exactly how she does all of her paper piecing patterns. It's so cool and it was fun and I might be addicted. So thank you, Laura. Amazing. So after I had that, you could leave it at that, be a really simple card, but I wanted to jazz it up a little bit. So I grabbed a black pen and I just started adding dots and leaves and squiggly lines and just a bunch of different patterns on each one of these hexagons. I just wanted to have a little bit of a variation on each one, and I thought it'd be fun to just add all of these on with a black pen. Now, of course, you could skip the step, or even use pattern paper to cut out some of the hexagons. Maybe some are plain, some have patterns. I think you could have a lot of fun with this and really change up exactly how it looks on your card. For the hexagons that have the leaves on them, at first I drew the stems with leaves just as an outline, and then I decided to fill them in. And I did that for actually 2 of the hexagons. I also have just some really free-form squiggly lines, and that finishes up all of the patterns. So at this point, I decided that I did want some additional color on the Thinking of You area. So I grabbed my mini hearts die set from Simon. This is an oldie but a goodie. I grabbed a red heart that was previously cut out for the greeting area, and I also grabbed a white heart that I'll put on that red hexagon. Then I also decided that I wanted the banner on the greeting to be purple. So I took my Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink and stamped that on white cardstock and trimmed it out. And Wilted Violet is actually a pretty good match in color for that purple color of Hero Arts cardstock. So I put a little bit of adhesive behind that, just a little bit of foam tape, and then popped that up. I also adhered the red heart and the white heart, and then adhered everything to a Neenah Environmental Desert Storm card base. So that pretty much finishes up the second card. We're going to jump right into the third card right now, which is super fun and also very colorful. I'm using the Peony Bouquet greeting stamp, or not greeting stamp. Hello, it's not a greeting stamp, it's a background stamp, but it's a cling stamp. And I positioned it right over the top of my card. This is a 5x7 card base made out of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock. And I've mounted that on the door of my MISTI, and now I'm going to be using 6 colors of Distress Oxide ink. Starting out with Festive Berries, and I'm going to apply the ink to this top corner of the stamp. I want to get it really juicy and inked up well. Then I'll take a paper towel and I'm going to dab off some of that ink on that bottom edge. And this is going to leave the area a little bit less stamped so that I can have it transition into Ripe Persimmon, which is the next color in orange shade. So now I'm taking Ripe Persimmon. I haven't cleaned off the stamp at all. And I'm just applying Ripe Persimmon at a diagonal right below where that red area was. And then I'll take a paper towel and dab off the top edge of the orange strip and also the bottom edge, so that it has the transition from the red, and it can also transition to yellow in just a minute here. So after I have the orange stamped, I moved on to Mustard Seed, and I proceeded to do the same exact steps going all the way down to the very last color. Now I ended up not having enough room to use Wilted Violet. I only went to Mermaid Lagoon. So I didn't have all the colors used, but basically just 5 colors, super close. So after Mustard Seed, I did Mowed Lawn, Mermaid Lagoon, and then I pretty much had finished up that entire area. Now the yellow diagonal stripe was looking a little bit weak, so I decided to stamp the yellow area once more. So I inked up that stamp, just that yellow strip right down the middle, took off a little bit of that ink off each end, and then stamped down onto my project once more, and that kind of filled in the gaps. So now that all of my stamping's done, I'm going to do a little bit of die cutting. I'm using the A7 Thin Frames die set from Simon, and I'm going to cut out a very, very thin black frame. After I die cut it, I used the interior piece of that frame, and I just lined it up over the center of my card front, and then used a little tiny bit of washi tape to hold that in place. This is going to give me a guide for exactly how to adhere this very, very thin frame, which can kind of warp and morph a little bit because it is so thin. So I just wanted something that I could help line it up. So after I had that black piece just temporarily on the front of my card, I added a tiny strip of glue using some Gina K Designs Connect glue right around the outside edge, and then placed my very thin frame right on top and snug up against that black rectangle. Removed the washi tape that was holding that solid rectangle, just removed that, and then I was able to continue adhering my frame down onto my card front. This is just going to make sure I have my frame exactly where I want it. Like I said, it's a very, very thin frame, so it does kind of want to morph a little bit and warp. So this is a way to make sure that it is on there perfectly. I then took my entire card, put it back in my MISTI, and stamped a greeting from the Greetings Mix 2 stamp set in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is a very, very simple card, but a really fun technique to get all of that colorful stamping. So there's the third card. I have all of the cards finished at this point. And then it was really bugging me how the embossed greeting on my really large card just wasn't showing up as well. I didn't have enough embossing powder on there. So I went over the little mottled area of the embossing powder and went over it with a gel pen. This is just a Jelly Roll number 10 bold. And I just filled in some of the white areas, or the areas that needed more white on this greeting. And it really filled it in and finished up that card. So those are all three cards using all new supplies from Simon Says Stamp. I'll have everything I've used for these cards listed down below, as well as a link over to the Simon Says Stamp shop so that you can see the entire release and check out some of these new products. Thanks so much for watching today. I will be back next week with more card videos. Until then, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.